After having hung up on Sophia, Ellie deleted the call history in order for Edward not to be aware of the fact that she spoke with Sophia. She walked to her window after having dropped Edward's phone on the lamp desk, where she had picked it. She watched as the sun rose and she was so amazed by the view and its beauty. She had never felt that kind of peace before, as she had always been on the run her whole life, trying to escape from her dirty past. She remembered the eyes of the man which were fixed on her, as he laid in the pool of blood. She couldn't get the gaze of the man off her head, as it had been hunting her in her dreams every blessed day, seeking for revenge for his death. To keep the scene off her head, she closed her eyes, thinking that would be a way of escaping from her reality, but the more she kept her eyes closed, the more the image became vivid in her head. As she opened her eyes and looked at the glass of her window right in front of her, all she could see was that vengeful gaze seeking for revenge. She felt like the man was behind her, trying to strangle her to death, and as she thought of that, a hand touched her from behind, which made her fidget and scared. Her body was still and she couldn't turn, as she felt the man's gaze was on her. The only thing she could think of at that moment was a means of escape, and as she clenched her fist, getting ready to fight back, Edward's voice brought her back to reality. "Morning sunshine," Edward said, hugging Ellie from behind, with Ellie feeling his breath on her skin. When Ellie realized it was Edward holding her from behind, she heaved a sigh of relief. Turning around, she faced Edward and didn't fail to notice how handsome he looked in the early hours of the morning. She was so engrossed in observing Edward's features that she was only brought back to her senses after Edward snapped his fingers across her face. "Do you have to make it obvious that you didn't have enough of me last night?" Edward jokingly said, trying to compliment his beauty. This statement made Ellie burst into laughter. As she laughed, Edward couldn't take his eyes off her. Ellie's laughter was like music, filling Edward's ears and warming his heart. He fell in love with the way her smile reached her eyes, making them sparkle with joy. He was captivated by her smile, making him lose his sense of reasoning and getting oblivious of his surroundings. "Should we say you are the one mesmerized by my smile?" Ellie asked sheepishly, breaking Edward's thought. "You can say that again," Edward said, smiling, finding it hard to take his gaze off Ellie. "Seems like you were enjoying the view of the sunrise," Edward asked, looking outside the window, also getting immersed with the beauty of the sunrise. As they stood next to each other, their eyes were glued on the scene before them, with each of them in his/her world of thought. Silence filled the room, as if the two were having a reflection about their lives. "You know what? Before I met you, I promised myself not to ever fall in love again. My childhood wasn't a pleasant one, as I witnessed my mum gets betrayed by my dad. My dad cheated on her with her best friend, and my mum couldn't bear the level of betrayal which led to her death," Edward said, taking a break. Ellie looked into his eyes, and she could see how hurt he was talking about his late mother. Mum had always been in love with Dad, but Dad was in love with another woman, which was Mom's friend. Although they had an arranged marriage, I still feel like Dad should have opened his heart to love Mom after living together for so many years. If he had done that, Mom wouldn't have died. I grew up hating my dad and blaming him every day for being the cause of Mom's death. While growing up, I promised myself never to be like him. When I got married to Sophia, I never loved her, but I changed my attitude towards her, after remembering my promise of never ending up like Dad and never being the cause of a woman's pain and death. But when I had just begun to fall in love with Sophia, I found out she was cheating on me with my best friend, and she is carrying his child in her belly," Edward said, broken-heartedly. Ellie was shocked that Edward was aware of the fact that Sophia was cheating on him, but he pretended as if he knew nothing of such. She kept on looking into his eyes, and all she could see was hurt and sadness. This feeling felt familiar to Ellie, and it was the same feeling she had when her ex betrayed her. "It was the night I discovered the truth about Sophia and Richard that I met you. When I set my eyes on you, I felt something different. I wasn't sure of the feeling at first because I was hurt, and I thought a broken heart wouldn't fall in love again. But I was wrong. When you confessed your feelings for me at the beach that day, and we had a fight which made you cut off any means of communication from me, I ascertained my feelings for you then. I realized I am in love with you and that I am just trying to take caution so I wouldn't get hurt again. When I saw you at the club yesterday with that guy very close to you, I realized I do not want any other man close to you and I want all of you for myself, Edward said, now facing Ellie. I love you, Ellie, and I am sorry for how I may have hurt you in any way in the past. I promise to love you until my last breath, and I promise not to cheat on you, and if I will peradventure cheat on you, I will only be cheating on you with death. Do you promise me the same, Ellie? Edward, who was now holding Ellie's hand with his gaze fixed on her, asked, waiting for her response. Looking into Edward's eyes, Ellie responded, I promise. In no time their lips met, and as they kissed, Ellie's mind went to her dark past, which Edward wasn't aware of and which might bring an end to their growing romance. She felt a kind of peace in Edward's arms, and there at that moment, she made a promise to herself, never to make her dark past known, as she was scared of losing Edward, and she would do anything to keep him by her side.